I've seen skeptics of the deal. People say the Iranians will never change their behavior. Well, maybe that's true, and if so, they don't get any of the benefits of the bargain. But isn't it worth trying? So, yes, the deal started yesterday. We're going to start the 60-day clock today.
All right. The Vice President yesterday confirming the 60-day period of negotiations with Iran has begun to lock in a final deal. But not everyone is in favor of starting one. By the way, it hasn't started. That includes the supreme leader of Iran, who issued this statement saying, quote, I, as a matter of principle, held a different view. However, out of the commitment that esteemed president, his president, by the way, as the head of the Supreme National Security Council, gave to me on his own behalf and on the behalf of the other members regarding the safeguarding of the rights of the Iranian nation and the resistance front and his explicit acceptance of that responsibility, I granted my permission. Here to discuss this and more, retired four-star general, Fox News senior strategic analyst, chairman of the Institute of Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, why the shift from the president from military means to economic means?
Well, first of all, I mean, the president is the first of the 8 presidents to deal with Iran in a consequential way and leading to significant military operations. No one has ever confronted them in such a manner. So what happened here is the reality is simply this. The president made a major priority shift based on advice, from military objectives, and they were defined, as we all know, taking away their offensive capability, nuclear, ballistic missiles, drones, support for proxies, and so weaken the regime that eventually they would be vulnerable to a takeover by their own people. That's kind of the path that we were on. The 4th or 5th week we stopped that. And the reality is it shifted to economic objectives and political objectives involving the midterm as taking the priority. His advisors landed the idea that because of the persistence of the shutdown of the Straits of Hormuz and that the oil and gas prices were going to continue to remain at the levels they were at, if not get higher, if we return to military operations, and the potential that if we return to military operations, that the Iranians would be able to successfully retaliate against the Gulf states' oil and gas infrastructure. Military leaders discount that because they think we could adequately defend it and also take away most of their offensive capability to do that. But nonetheless, that idea landed, and I think the risk of opening the Straits of Hormuz, which we tried and was shut down at the 36th hour, what happened there? The Arabs put pressure on the president saying, one, we don't think it's going to succeed, and two, we fear they're going to come after their oil and gas infrastructure. They had no idea what our military capability would be to open the straits and also what our military capability would be to adequately defend the oil and gas infrastructure and take away Iran's offensive capability. Nonetheless, this idea landed in the sense of this could cause a worldwide depression, and it discounted our military capability, and that led to the shift in priorities that we see, and it led to, obviously, the formulation of a deal. And people get wrapped up in the deal, and I understand why, but you got to understand what the deal is. That the only deal is really opening the Straits of Hormuz. That is the deal that's been agreed to do, and we remove our blockade to do that, and we make other concessions to do that. And then the rest of it in the document is a pathway leading to a final agreement. After 2 months, we could have had a final agreement. I think we probably went into negotiations thinking we were going to get a final agreement, but we couldn't get that final agreement. But remember, the idea was to take the pressure off of oil and gas, open the Straits of Hormuz to do that, and avoid military operations, which could lead to further destruction of the oil infrastructure.
So
that was accomplished. The straits are going to be open, and there are significant issues surrounding the deal, just dealing with the opening of the straits.
So, General, there's many things in the 14 points I'm sure you could go over. We could go over for the whole hour. But the one thing that is an impossible situation is if they want Israel to stop going after Hezbollah, when every time they go after him, it's in response to a Hezbollah attack. 4 IDF soldiers were killed. Do you really expect Israel not to respond? And because of that, there's reason to believe that's why negotiations haven't started already? This seems it's never going to get traction if you want Israel to not hit back at a terrorist organization. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, the Iranians here certainly are trying to drive a wedge between the United States and Israel. To a certain degree, they've accomplished some of it. The Iranians cannot make a claim dealing with Lebanon. Lebanon is, they don't own Lebanon. Lebanon is an independent country. Obviously, they have an organization inside of it made up of Lebanese citizens called Hezbollah. It operates under the orders of Iran for sure.
Yeah.
And they've had significant political and obviously military influence in that country for years. But their principal reason for being there is, one, is to defend Iran against an attack by Israel, and two, to attack Israel, and also is their major export of terrorism outside of the region. So they have interest there for sure. But we should tell them to stand down. You're not going to make a claim here. The reality is, the major lesson from October the 7th that the Israelis have learned, and it's obvious looking at it, is you cannot permit proxies on your border to have capacity to attack. That can never happen again. Hamas in particular, and Hezbollah specifically here. And that is what is happening here. Hezbollah was building up infrastructure in the south, and then began to, despite the ceasefire on April the 17th, a special ceasefire dealing with Lebanon, they conducted over 2,000 rockets and drone attacks in Israel, which are still going on. In the last 48 hours, they've been going on. That's the reality of it. You mentioned we have 4 IDF soldiers killed. Israel cannot permit this to stand. This is about the sovereignty and existence of the state. Remember, the objective of Iran and its proxies is to destroy the state of Israel, not physically, not defeat its military, make it such a volatile security situation that people don't want to live there. Yep. What is happening in northern Israel? All of the towns and villages have been evacuated. Kids aren't going to school. They moved into families. They're in hotels. They're not living in northern Israel. Israel can't let that stand.
I hear you.
They have to fight back.
General, if the cartels were lobbing rockets into Texas from Mexico, we would not allow that, even if Israel asked us to. And I think that I was a little surprised the vice president was going after Israel yesterday at the podium more than he was going after Iran. General, thanks so much. I look forward to your analysis throughout the weekend, and we see if these 60-day peace talks will begin. Thanks, General.
Be sure to like and subscribe for all the Fox News latest on YouTube, and catch full shows streaming now on Fox One.